The first time Fenna Bridger fell backward off the low wall behind the trading post, Lucas Bell thought she had simply lost her balance. He dropped the surveying chain he had been coiling and lunged forward, catching her beneath the shoulders just before her head would have struck the packed earth. She was lighter than he expected, her green skin warm beneath his palms, and when she looked up at him, her tusks were visible in a wide grin. "Good reflexes," she said. Lucas helped her upright, stepping back immediately. "Are you hurt?" "No." She brushed dust from her leather vest. "That was a trust exercise." "A what?" "A trust exercise. You know, where you fall backward and someone catches you." Fenna tilted her head, her dark braids swinging over one shoulder. "My cousin told me humans do them all the time in their guilds." Lucas stared at her. She could not have been more than 20, with the kind of earnest expression that made him feel ancient at 28 despite the modest gap. "We do not typically do them without warning the other person first." "Oh," she considered this. "That makes sense. Sorry. But you caught me anyway, so it worked." Before Lucas could formulate a response to that particular logic, Fenna had already climbed back onto the wall. It was only about waist-high, built to mark the boundary between the trading post and the open ground where merchants parked their wagons. She turned her back to him. "Wait," Lucas said. She fell. He caught her again, this time prepared enough that he did not stumble. Her weight settled into his arms with complete trust, no bracing or flinching. "Still good reflexes," she observed cheerfully as he set her on her feet. "Miss Bridger, Fenna." "Fenna, I have work to do. The survey for the bridge project needs to be completed by sunset." "Right, the bridge. That is exciting." She hopped back up onto the wall with surprising grace. "My father says you are the best bridge builder in 3 territories." "Your father is kind." Lucas retrieved his surveying chain, trying to redirect his attention to the stakes he had been measuring between. The border town of Crestmark sat in a natural basin, with the human settlement on one side of a steep gorge and the newer orc homesteads on the other. The wooden footbridge they currently used became impassable every spring when snowmelt turned the creek into a torrent. A proper stone bridge was overdue. Behind him, he heard Fenna shift on the wall. "Are you going to?" he started to say, turning. She was already falling. He caught her for the 3rd time and she beamed up at him. 3 for 3. This is absurd." "Is it? You have not dropped me yet." She stood, then glanced at the sky as though gauging the time. "I should let you work. Same time tomorrow. Same time we do not have a time." "Well, we do now." "I will be here tomorrow at this hour." Fenna gave him a little wave and walked off toward the orc side of town, her stride confident. Lucas stood holding his surveying chain and wondering what, exactly, had just happened. She appeared the next day at precisely the same hour. Lucas had told himself she would not actually come back, that it had been a strange impulse she would forget. But there she was, climbing onto the wall. "Ready," she called. No, she fell anyway. He caught her anyway. "Excellent," she said. "Same time in 1 hour," Lucas blinked. 1 hour. "You said tomorrow." "I said same time tomorrow, and I will be back for that too, but I thought we could also do one in an hour, for practice." "Practice for what?" "Trusting." She said it as though it were obvious. An hour later, Lucas was attempting to calculate the load-bearing requirements for the bridge's central pier when Fenna appeared again. She did not even bother with preamble, just climbed the wall and fell. He caught her, set her down, and watched her walk away with a cheerful "see you in an hour." This pattern continued for the rest of the afternoon. Every hour, Fenna would appear, fall backward off the wall, let Lucas catch her, exchange a few words, and leave. By the 5th repetition, Lucas had stopped trying to protest and simply positioned himself to catch her when she arrived. "You are very prompt," he said, setting her on her feet after the 6th trust fall of the day. "I like schedules." Fenna adjusted her vest. Keeps things organized. Tomorrow I am going to start coming every hour from dawn to dusk. Is that all right? I am not sure I have any say in the matter. Of course you do. If you tell me to stop, I will stop. Lucas studied her face, looking for mockery or hidden motive. He found only sincerity. Why are you doing this? Fenna's expression turned thoughtful. I have been watching you work on the bridge plans for 2 weeks. You move very carefully, like you are afraid something will break. But you caught me 6 times today without hesitating once. I wanted to see if you noticed. The observation landed with unexpected weight. Lucas felt something shift in his chest, an uncomfortable recognition he was not ready to examine. I should finish this survey. Right. See you at dawn. She smiled and left. Lucas did not sleep well that night. He kept thinking about the way Fenna fell, that absolute certainty that he would catch her. It reminded him of things he had spent 3 years trying not to think about. True to her word, Fenna appeared at dawn. Lucas had already been awake for an hour, reviewing his plans by lamplight in the small room he rented above the surveyor's office. When he emerged to begin the day's work, she was waiting by the wall. Morning, she said, and fell. He caught her. For the next 3 days, Fenna maintained her hourly schedule with remarkable precision. Lucas found himself anticipating her arrivals, positioning himself near the wall in advance. On the 4th day, he started bringing his pocket watch to check the time. You are getting faster, Fenna commented after a particularly smooth catch. You are getting more predictable. Is that bad? No. Lucas surprised himself with the honesty. It is efficient, she grinned. The expression made her tusks more prominent, and Lucas realized he had stopped noticing them as anything unusual. Efficiency is good. My father says that is why you are the best at what you do. Your father talks about me often. Sometimes. He respects you. Fenna's tone suggested this was significant. Not all humans earn that. It was the first direct acknowledgement either of them had made of the tension that ran beneath Crestmark's surface. The town functioned on a truce. Humans and orcs traded peacefully, but they did not often mix beyond business. Lucas had noticed the way some of the older residents looked at him when Fenna appeared for their hourly meetings, lips pressed thin in disapproval. I respect your father as well, Lucas said carefully. He is a fair merchant. He is. He is also worried about the bridge. Worried how? Fenna sat on the wall instead of immediately falling, and Lucas felt an odd disappointment at the broken routine. He is worried you will not build it. There have been a lot of surveyors and planners over the years. They all measure and calculate, but nothing gets built. Meanwhile, every spring we lose weeks of trade because the footbridge floods. This time will be different. How do you know? Lucas looked at the stakes and strings marking his survey, the careful measurements he had rechecked a dozen times. Because I do not make mistakes. Something flickered across Fenna's face, an expression too quick to identify. She stood on the wall. Catch me, he did. The hourly trust falls continued for 2 more weeks. Lucas completed his survey, drafted his initial plans, and submitted them to the town council. The council approved the project with surprising speed apparently. The trade disruption from the impassable spring crossing was costing everyone enough that even the more prejudiced council members were willing to set aside their reservations about building a bridge to orc homesteads. Lucas began ordering materials and hiring workers. Fenna kept appearing every hour. You not have your own work to do? He asked one afternoon after catching her for what must have been the 90th or 100th time. He had lost count. I do. I help my father with the trading post, keep the books, manage inventory, but I can do most of that in between our hours. She seemed pleased with this arrangement, our hours. That is what I call them in my schedule. Lucas hours. Fenna pulled a small leather journal from her pocket and showed him a page covered in neat handwriting. Sure enough, every hour from dawn to dusk was marked with his name. Lucas felt heat rise in his face. That is, you should not. Why not? People will talk. People are already talking. Fenna closed the journal. Does it bother you? Does it bother you? She considered this with her characteristic directness. No, I like spending time with you, even if it is only a minute or two each hour. You are interesting. I am not interesting. I build bridges. That is interesting to me. Fenna climbed back onto the wall. Ready, he caught her as always, but this time when he set her down, she did not immediately leave. She stayed close enough that he could see the exact shade of green in her skin, darker along her jawline and lighter across her cheeks. Lucas, she said quietly. Yes. Why do you always look so worried? The question caught him off guard. I am not worried. You are. You check everything 3 times. You pace at night. I can hear you from the trading post. You never trust anything to just be done. You have to verify it yourself. She paused. It is like you are waiting for something to go wrong. Lucas stepped back, putting distance between them. I am careful. There is a difference. Is there? He did not answer. Fenna waited a moment longer, then nodded as though he had confirmed something she suspected. She left without saying goodbye. That night, Lucas lay awake and thought about a bridge in Halford, a town 2 territories south of Crestmark. He had designed it when he was 25, fresh from his apprenticeship and full of confidence. The stone arch had been beautiful, elegant, spanning a river with graceful economy. He had been so proud. The bridge had stood for 4 months before a support gave way. A farmer named Thomas had been driving a wagon across when the stones shifted. The bridge did not collapse entirely. Lucas's fundamental design had been sound, but the failure had been catastrophic enough. Thomas survived with a broken leg and shattered ribs. The wagon and horse went into the river. The horse drowned. An inquiry determined that a quarry had supplied inferior stone without Lucas's knowledge, and that a contractor had misread a specification during construction. Lucas was cleared of blame. The quarry paid damages. The contractor lost his license. None of that mattered to Lucas. He had designed the bridge. It was his responsibility, and it had failed. After Halford, Lucas had rebuilt his entire approach. He checked every stone himself now. He verified every measurement personally. He trusted nothing to chance or delegation. In 3 years, he had completed 4 bridges and 2 aqueducts, all of them flawless. But the caution that made his work perfect also made him exhausting to work with. His crews respected him but did not like him. His clients hired him for results, not warmth. And then this orc girl had appeared and decided to trust him hourly with her physical safety. It was absurd. It was unnerving. It was undoing something in his chest he had thought was permanently locked. The next morning, Fenna was waiting at dawn as usual. Lucas caught her, and when he set her down, she handed him a warm pastry wrapped in cloth. You skipped breakfast, she said. I checked with your landlord. Lucas stared at the pastry. You asked about my eating habits. You are too thin. It is not healthy. She crossed her arms. Are you angry? I am confused. By pastry, by you. Lucas set the pastry carefully on the wall. Why do you care if I eat breakfast? Fenna's ears flicked. A small movement he had learned meant she was uncomfortable. Because I care about you, is that strange? Yes, no, I do not know. He ran a hand through his hair. Fenna, what are we doing right now? A trust exercise. No, I mean these hourly meetings, the everything. What is this? She was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes steady on his. I like you. I thought that was obvious. Lucas's heart kicked against his ribs. Like me? Yes. In the way where I think about you constantly and organize my entire day around seeing you and want to know everything about what makes you worried and serious and careful." Fenna's voice was calm, but her hands twisted together. "If that is not welcome, please tell me and I will stop. It is welcome." The words came out hoarse. "It is extremely welcome. That is the problem." "How is that a problem?" "Because I am not," Lucas stopped, struggling for the right words. "I am not good at this, at being what someone needs. I am reliable with stone and mathematics. People are different. You have caught me 108 times without failing once. That is different. Is it?" Fenna stepped closer. "Lucas, do you know what the hardest part of a trust fall is?" He shook his head. "The falling. You have to just let go completely and trust that the other person will be there. I have been doing it hourly for weeks because I wanted you to see that I trust you, but also because I wanted you to see that you could hold that trust. You have not dropped me, not once." She paused. "Maybe the problem is not that you are bad at being what someone needs. Maybe the problem is that you do not trust yourself." The observation landed like a hammer strike, precise and devastating. Lucas felt his carefully maintained walls crack. "3 years ago I built a bridge in Halford," he heard himself say. "It failed. A man was badly hurt." Fenna listened without interrupting as he told her the whole story, the inquiry, the cleared name that did not feel cleared, the grinding guilt that had reshaped his entire approach to his work. When he finished, she was quiet. "That sounds terrible," she finally said. "It was. But it was not your fault. You said the investigation determined that. It was my bridge, my design, my responsibility." Lucas's hands clenched. "If I had checked the stone myself, if I had verified the contractor's work more carefully, you would have what? Caught every possible human error in a complex project, been simultaneously in 3 places at once." Fenna's voice was gentle but firm. "Lucas, mistakes happen. The people who made those mistakes were held responsible, but you have been holding yourself responsible for their choices for 3 years. If I hold myself responsible, I can prevent it from happening again. Can you? Or are you just making yourself miserable while building perfect bridges that you cannot enjoy because you are too afraid they will fail?" Lucas had no answer for that. Fenna reached out slowly, giving him time to step back if he wanted. When he did not move, she took his hands. Her grip was warm and solid. "I trust you, not because you are perfect, because you are careful and thoughtful and you catch me every single time even though I give you no warning. That is not perfection, that is character. You barely know me. I know you well enough. And I would like to know you better." She squeezed his hands gently. "If you want that too." Lucas looked down at their joined hands, green skin against pale, and felt the weight of 3 years of self-imposed isolation pressing against something new and fragile and terrifying. "I want that," he said quietly. Fenna's smile was radiant. "Good. Then catch me." She let go of his hands, took 1 step back, and fell off the wall. He caught her, laughing despite himself at the absurdity of it. She laughed too, and the sound was bright in the morning air. "Can we maybe do this slightly less than hourly?" Lucas asked as he helped her up. If we are courting," the word made it real. Lucas swallowed. "Yes, that. We can negotiate the schedule," Fenna said solemnly, though her eyes danced with amusement. "How about every 2 hours? How about twice a day? 3 times and you have a deal. Fine. 3 times a day." Lucas shook his head, still amazed this was his life now. "You are impossible." "I am determined. There is a difference." Fenna picked up the pastry she had brought and pushed it into his hands. "Now eat breakfast. I will be back in 8 hours for your midday trust fall." She left him standing there, holding a pastry and feeling lighter than he had in years. The bridge construction began in earnest 2 days later. Lucas hired a crew of 8 workers, a mix of human and orc laborers recommended by various merchants in town. He inspected every stone that arrived from the quarry, rejecting 3 shipments that did not meet his specifications. His crew found this frustrating at first, but when Lucas explained about Halford a brief, factual account with none of the emotional weight they understood. Fenna appeared for her 3 trust falls daily, now timed around the work schedule rather than strict hourly intervals. She came at dawn before Lucas started, at midday when the crew broke for lunch, and at sunset after work ended. Each time he caught her. Each time they talked a little longer. "How is the bridge coming?" she asked one evening, sitting beside him on the wall instead of falling. "Slower than I would like. The foundation for the North Pier is giving us trouble. The bedrock is deeper than the survey indicated. Can you adjust the design?" "Yes, but it means more excavation. That takes time." Lucas frowned at his hands. "We need to finish before spring snowmelt. If we miss that window, the gorge will be too dangerous to work in and we will lose months." "You will finish," Fenna said with certainty. "How do you know?" "Because you do not make mistakes, remember." She bumped her shoulder against his. "Also because you have the most stubborn, careful, determined approach to building I have ever seen. The bridge will be done and it will be perfect." "It does not have to be perfect." Fenna gave him a look. "It has to be safe," Lucas corrected. "That is different from perfect." "Is it though?" He wanted to argue, but she had a point. The line between safe and perfect had blurred for him over the past 3 years. Every extra check, every redundant measurement, were they truly necessary for safety, or were they armor against his own guilt? "I am trying," he said quietly, "to trust more." "The way you trust me. I know you are. I can see it." Fenna took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "You let Gareth check the mortar mix yesterday without verifying it yourself. You notice that. I notice everything about you." She said it matter-of-factly. "It is part of how liking someone works." Lucas looked at their joined hands, still marveling that this was real. A month ago, he had been alone with his plans and his guilt. Now he had this fierce, strange, wonderful orc girl who scheduled trust falls and brought him pastries and somehow saw through his defenses to the fear underneath. "Fenna," he said. "Yes, thank you for being patient with me." She smiled, small and soft. "You are worth the patience." The bridge work progressed through autumn into early winter. The crew settled into a rhythm and Lucas slowly, painfully learned to delegate. He still checked the critical elements himself, but he stopped hovering over every small task. The crew appreciated it. The work went faster. Fenna integrated herself into the project in small ways. She brought lunch for the crew twice a week, her father donating bread and cheese from the trading post. She kept a running tally of supplies, catching a billing error that would have cost the project significantly. She learned the names of all the workers and remembered details about their families, making them feel seen. The crew started calling her the boss's girl when they thought Lucas could not hear. He did not correct them. Neither did Fenna. They stole moments together between his work and her meals at the trading post. Evening walks along the gorge, quiet conversations that stretched late into the night. Lucas learned that Fenna had taught herself to read and write, that she loved mathematics almost as much as he did, that her mother had died when she was young, and she barely remembered her. Fenna learned about his childhood in a village 3 territories west, his apprenticeship under a master builder who taught him to see the logic in stone, his pride in his work that had been so damaged by Halford. "You still have the plans?" Fenna asked one night. They were in Lucas's room above the surveyor's office, reviewing the bridge drawings by lamplight. "For the Halford Bridge?" "Yes." "Why? Can I see them?" Lucas hesitated, then retrieved the rolled parchment from the bottom of his trunk. He had not looked at these plans in 3 years. Fenna spread them on the table, studying the elevations and details with careful attention. "This is beautiful," she said finally. "It failed." "No, the construction failed. The design is elegant. Look at these arch proportions, Lucas. This is really good work." "It does not matter how good the design is if the bridge does not stand." Fenna looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you know what I think?" "What?" "I think you have been punishing yourself by only seeing the failure. But this bridge stood for 4 months. It held hundreds of crossings. Yes, there was one failure because of things outside your control, but there were also hundreds of successes you are not counting." She tapped the plans. "You designed something beautiful and functional. That matters." Lucas stared at the drawings, seeing them through her eyes for the first time in years. She was right, the design was good. The proportions were elegant. He had been so focused on the one catastrophic failure that he had forgotten the months of success. "I do not know how to not carry it," he admitted. "You do not have to set it down completely. Just maybe stop letting it be the only thing you carry." Fenna came around the table and took his hands. "The new bridge is going to be amazing. And when it is finished, you will have proof that you can build something that stands. Will that help, maybe?" Lucas squeezed her hands. "Having you here helps more. Then I will keep being here." She leaned up and kissed his cheek, a brief, warm press of lips. "Now explain this support calculation to me, because I think I am reading it wrong." They spent the rest of the evening going over the plans, Fenna asking questions that made Lucas think about his choices in new ways. When she finally left near midnight, Lucas rolled up the Halford plans and put them back in his trunk. They still hurt to look at, but the hurt was different now. Smaller. Winter settled over Crestmark in earnest. The bridge piers rose slowly from the gorge floor, stone by careful stone. Lucas's crew worked through cold and occasional snow, racing to finish the foundation before the ground froze too hard. They made it with 2 weeks to spare. The town started to take real notice of the progress. Merchants came to watch the work, discussing how much easier trade would be with a reliable crossing. Some of the older humans still grumbled about building bridges to orc settlements, but their complaints had less force when faced with the practical reality of increased commerce. Not everyone was pleased, though. Lucas first became aware of active opposition when he arrived at the work site one morning to find "Orc Lover" painted across the northern pier in crude white letters. The crew stood around it in uncomfortable silence. Lucas felt his stomach turn cold. "I will clean it," said Gareth, one of the human workers. "No." Fenna's voice cut across the awkwardness. Lucas had not heard her approach, but there she was, staring at the slur with a tight jaw. "Leave it visible. Let whoever did this see that we kept working anyway." "Fenna," Lucas started. "They want to scare us. Scare you." "Are you scared?" Lucas looked at the paint, at Fenna's defiant expression, at his crew waiting to see how he would respond. "No, I am angry." "Good. Use that." Fenna turned to the crew. "Let us build a bridge these cowards can use to get their goods to market. That will show them what orc lovers accomplish." The crew, somewhat heartened by this response, got to work. Lucas stood looking at the slur a moment longer, then made himself move past it. Fenna was right, the best response was to keep building, but the vandalism gnawed at him. That evening he reported it to the town constable, who took notes with a skeptical expression that suggested nothing would be done. Lucas left the constable's office frustrated and helpless. Fenna was waiting outside. He will not investigate. Probably not. Because it is about orcs. Lucas could not argue with that. They walked together toward the trading post, the evening cold biting through his coat. "Does it bother you?" Fenna asked quietly. "What people say about us?" "Yes, not because I doubt us, because I hate that you have to deal with it. I have been dealing with prejudice my whole life. This is not new." Fenna's voice was matter-of-fact, but Lucas heard the weariness underneath. "What is new is having someone who gets angry about it with me." Lucas stopped walking and turned to face her. They were alone on the darkening street. "Fenna, you do not have to say anything." "I do, though." He took a breath. "I love you. I have for weeks, I think, maybe since you started your ridiculous hourly schedule, and I hate that loving you means you get targeted by small-minded fools." Fenna's eyes widened. "You love me?" "Yes." "I love you too." She said it simply, certainly. "And the small-minded fools are not your fault. Neither is the prejudice. That is theirs to carry, not yours." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her close in the cold street. She fit against him perfectly, solid and warm and real. "Still," he murmured into her hair, "I wish I could fix it." "You cannot fix people. You can only build things. So build us a bridge and let that be enough." The bridge grew through the depths of winter. The piers stood firm and the crew began work on the arch itself, carefully placing each stone in the growing curve. It was delicate, exacting work. Lucas checked every placement, but he did it with growing confidence rather than grinding anxiety. The bridge was sound. He could feel it. Fenna continued her 3 daily trust falls with religious consistency. Sometimes Lucas caught her in front of the crew, who cheered and made jokes about it. Sometimes it was private, just the two of them in the early morning or late evening. Each time felt like a small ceremony, a reaffirmation of something neither of them could quite name but both understood. In late winter, with the bridge nearly complete, a delegation from the town council visited the worksite. Lucas gave them a tour, explaining the structure and specifications. They nodded and made approving noises, clearly pleased the project was ahead of schedule. Then Councilman Devon, an older merchant who had initially opposed the bridge, pulled Lucas aside. "It is fine work," Devon said, "but there is talk, Belle." "What kind of talk?" "About you and the orc girl. People are saying you are too close, that it is inappropriate." Devon's tone was falsely sympathetic. "I am not saying I agree, you understand, but for your reputation, for future projects you might want to be more careful." Lucas kept his voice level. "Fenna and I are courting openly. There is nothing inappropriate about it. Openly is the problem. If it were more discreet—" "I am not ashamed of her." Devon's expression hardened. "Then you are a fool. You have a good career ahead of you, Belle. Do not throw it away for some orc girl." Lucas felt rage flash through him, bright and clarifying. "Councilman, if my career requires me to be ashamed of the woman I love, then it is not a career worth having. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to finish." He walked away before Devon could respond, his hands shaking with suppressed anger. When he told Fenna about the conversation that evening, she was quiet for a long moment. "Will it hurt you?" she asked. "Professionally, I do not care. You should care. Your work is important." "You are more important." Lucas cupped her face in his hands. "Fenna, listen to me. I spent 3 years punishing myself over a bridge that failed. I am not going to spend the rest of my life pretending I do not love you because some narrow-minded councilman thinks I should. If that costs me projects, fine. I will build smaller bridges. I will survey wells. I do not care. I am not losing you." Fenna's eyes shone with unshed tears. "You are sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." She kissed him then, deep and fierce and certain. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "Then catch me." She fell backward off the wall. They had migrated there during the conversation without Lucas noticing, and he caught her, laughing. She laughed too, and for a moment the cold and the prejudice and the worried future all fell away. There was just the two of them, solid and together. The bridge was completed 2 weeks before the spring snowmelt began. The final stone was set on a clear, cold afternoon with half the town watching. Lucas walked the length of it 3 times, checking joins and mortar, finding everything sound. It was done. It was perfect. No, not perfect. Safe. Strong. Good enough. The town council scheduled an opening ceremony for the following week, timing it to coincide with the first spring market. Merchants from both the human and orc communities would cross together, officially opening the trade route. Lucas threw himself into final preparations, checking and rechecking despite knowing everything was ready. Old habits died hard. Fenna watched him with patient amusement, still appearing for her 3 daily trust falls like clockwork. "Are you nervous?" she asked the evening before the ceremony. They were standing on the new bridge, alone in the twilight. Below them, the creek was already swelling with early melt, white water rushing over rocks. The sound was constant and powerful. "Terrified," Lucas admitted. "Why?" "Because this is the first bridge I have completed since Halford. Because tomorrow everyone will walk across it, trusting it to hold them. Because," he stopped, the words catching in his throat. "Because what?" "Because if it fails, I will not survive it. Not again." Fenna was quiet for a moment, looking down at the rushing water. "Do you know what tomorrow is?" "The opening ceremony. It is also 6 months exactly since I did my first trust fall." She turned to face him. 180 days of falling backward and trusting you to catch me. You have not failed once. That is different. Is it? I am trusting you with my body, my safety, my heart. The people who cross this bridge tomorrow will trust you with exactly the same things. You already know how to hold that trust. You have been practicing. Lucas looked at the bridge stretching solid and real in the dimness. The stones fit together precisely, the arch curved in a graceful line, the whole structure balanced and true. He had built this. It would stand. "You are right," he said slowly. "I usually am." Fenna took his hand. "Come on, you need to sleep before tomorrow. You have a bridge to open." The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and bright. Spring was unmistakable in the air now, with the snow melting fast and the creek running high. Lucas stood at the northern approach to the bridge while merchants and townspeople gathered on both sides of the gorge. The mayor gave a speech about progress and cooperation. Councilman Devon stood near the back, looking sour. Fenna's father, Marcus Bridger, gave remarks on behalf of the orc community, thanking the town for the investment and Lucas for his skill. Then it was Lucas's turn. He had prepared a short technical explanation of the bridge's features, but standing there looking at the crowd, the words seemed insufficient. Instead, he spoke from the heart. 3 years ago, I built a bridge that failed," he said. "It taught me that perfection is impossible, but that care and attention matter. This bridge," he gestured at the span behind him, "is not perfect, but it is sound and strong and built to last. More importantly, it was built by human and orc workers together, paid for by a community that decided connection was worth the investment. That matters more than the stone." He paused, then looked directly at Fenna in the crowd. "Someone recently taught me that trust is not about being perfect. It is about being there consistently, especially when falling is scary. This bridge is here now. It will hold you. Please trust that." The mayor declared the bridge open. The crowd began to filter across, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. Lucas watched them go, merchants with carts, families with children, human and orc together. The bridge held firm under their weight, solid and unmoving. Fenna appeared at his elbow. "You did it. We did it," Lucas corrected. "You and your trust falls and your stubborn belief I could do this." "I was right to believe," she grinned up at him. "Want to test it properly?" "How?" "Trust fall. From the bridge." Lucas's heart jumped. "That is, the bridge is high, and there is water below. I am not actually going to fall into the water. I am just going to fall backward like always, and you will catch me." Fenna's eyes danced. "In front of everyone. One last trust exercise on the bridge you built. It was absurd. It was perfect. Lucas found himself nodding. Fenna climbed onto the bridge's low stone railing while people were still crossing. Several merchants stopped to watch, curious. She stood balanced on the edge for a moment, then raised her voice. "Everyone, watch this." The crowd turned. Fenna spread her arms wide, grinned down at Lucas, and fell backward. Time seemed to slow. Lucas saw her weight shift, saw her tip back over the gorge, saw the absolute trust in her face. He caught her cleanly, arms solid beneath her shoulders, and the crowd gasped and then burst into applause. Fenna laughed, bright and joyful, as Lucas helped her down. They were standing in the middle of the bridge now, surrounded by merchants and townspeople who had stopped to watch. Lucas's heart was pounding, but not from fear, from certainty. "Fenna Bridger," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Yes, I love you, I trust you, and I want to build a life with you on both sides of this bridge." He took her hands. "Will you marry me?" Fenna's eyes went wide. "You are proposing right now in front of everyone?" "Yes." Is that all right?" "It is perfect." She threw her arms around his neck. "Yes. Obviously yes." The crowd erupted in cheers. Even some of the more prejudiced townspeople looked caught up in the moment, clapping along with everyone else. Fenna kissed Lucas firmly, her tusks bumping his mouth in the way he had learned to expect and love. When they broke apart, she was grinning wildly. "I cannot believe you proposed on a bridge. I am a bridge builder. It seemed appropriate. It is appropriate. It is also extremely romantic." Fenna took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Do we live on the human side or the orc side?" "Both. We build a house right here." Lucas gestured to the land near the northern approach, "on the border, so we are always crossing." "I love that." Fenna squeezed his hand. "We should probably let people finish walking across our bridge, though." They stepped to the side, and the merchants resumed their crossing. Lucas and Fenna stood together watching the flow of traffic, human and orc, all trusting the bridge to hold them. Marcus Bridger approached, his weathered face creased in a smile. "My daughter tells me I should give you a hard time, but honestly I have been expecting this for months. Welcome to the family, Lucas." Lucas shook his hand, grateful for the acceptance. "Thank you, sir. Marcus, we are family now." He clapped Lucas on the shoulder. "And thank you for the bridge. This will change everything for our community." Over the following weeks, Lucas learned exactly how true that was. With reliable crossing, trade between the human and orc settlements increased dramatically. The orc farmers could bring produce to market without worrying about the spring floods. Human merchants could purchase orc-made goods year-round. The bridge became the center of a growing mixed community, with several families building homes near both approaches. Lucas and Fenna married in late spring, in a ceremony held where else on the bridge itself. Marcus gave his daughter away with obvious pride. Lucas's few family members traveled from the west to attend, along with several of his past clients who wanted to see the legendary bridge and meet the orc girl, who had apparently reformed the most perfectionist builder in 3 territories. They built their house on the northern approach as planned, a sturdy timber structure with large windows overlooking the gorge and the bridge. Fenna set up an office where she managed the books for several merchants, her mathematical skills and careful record-keeping in high demand. Lucas took on smaller projects in the area, a mill renovation, several houses, an irrigation system, and found he enjoyed the work more when he was not consumed by anxiety. The trust falls continued, though less frequently. Now they happened spontaneously. Fenna would suddenly announce trust fall and drop backward, and Lucas would catch her wherever they were. In the market, in their house, once in the middle of a town council meeting when Lucas had been asked to consult on a water project. That one had earned them some stern looks, but also barely suppressed laughter. A year after the bridge opened, the spring floods came with unusual force. Snowmelt swelled the creek into a torrent that filled the gorge with roaring brown water. The old wooden footbridge would have washed away within hours. Lucas's bridge stood firm. He and Fenna walked out to the middle of it during the height of the flood, standing above the churning water and feeling the solid stone beneath their feet. Not a tremor, not a shift. "It holds," Fenna said. "It does." Lucas felt something tight in his chest finally loosen. "It really does." "Did you doubt it?" "Yes. Until this moment I doubted it." Fenna took his hand. "And now I believe it. The bridge is sound. I built something that stands." He looked at her, this fierce green-skinned woman who had changed his life with absurd hourly trust falls. "I built something that matters." "You did." Fenna leaned against him, both of them watching the flood rage beneath the unmoved stone. "And now what? Now we keep building. Together." 2 years after that conversation, Fenna gave birth to their first child in the house by the bridge. A daughter with green-tinted skin and her father's dark hair, who they named Clara. Lucas held her with shaking hands, terrified of dropping her, until Fenna reminded him he had caught her mother countless times and never failed. Clara grew up on the bridge, learning to walk across its stones, playing with the children of both human and orc families. Lucas taught her about arches and load-bearing. Fenna taught her mathematics and how to keep accounts. She absorbed it all with eager intelligence. When Clara was 3, they had a second daughter, Rosalind, who looked more human but had her mother's pointed ears and direct manner. The 2 girls turned the house by the bridge into a place of constant noise and joy and chaos. Lucas continued to build buildings, the infrastructure of a growing mixed community. Each project came a little easier, the anxiety fading as proof accumulated that he could do this, that his designs were sound. He never stopped being careful, but the care no longer felt like punishment. Fenna expanded her business, eventually hiring 2 assistants and managing the finances for half the merchants in Crestmark. She scheduled her days with the same precision she had once applied to Trust Falls, though now the schedule included family dinner and story time alongside accounts and inventory. On the 5th anniversary of the bridge's opening, the town held a celebration. Lucas and Fenna stood together watching a parade cross their bridge, their daughters waving at the passing merchants. "You remember what you said when you proposed?" Fenna asked. "That I loved you and wanted to build a life with you. You said you wanted to build a life across the bridge." On both sides. She gestured at the scene before them, the mixed community, the trading, the families gathered together. "I think we did it." Lucas pulled her close, his arm around her shoulders. "We did, though you did most of the work with your insane Trust Fall schedule." Fenna laughed. "It worked, though." "It did." Clara tugged on Lucas's sleeve. "Papa, can we do a Trust Fall right now?" "Yes, on the bridge like Mama used to." Lucas looked at Fenna, who shrugged with a smile. "Your daughter, your bridge seems appropriate." So Lucas stood in the middle of the bridge he had built, surrounded by their community, and caught his 3-year-old daughter as she fell backward into his arms. She shrieked with laughter, demanding to do it again. When he set her down, Rosalind wanted a turn too. Then Fenna, grinning with mischief, climbed onto the bridge railing one more time. "For old time's sake," she said. "You are going to be the death of me," Lucas said, but he was smiling. "Not today." Fenna spread her arms. "Catch me, he always had, he always would." She fell, and he caught her, and the crowd that had gathered to watch cheered. Fenna kissed him there on the bridge in the late afternoon sun, with their daughters giggling and the community they had helped build surrounding them. The bridge stood solid beneath them, stone and mortar and mathematics, but also trust and love and the belief that some things were worth building carefully. It would stand for decades, that bridge. Long after Lucas and Fenna were gone, it would carry merchants and families and lovers across the gorge. But on that anniversary afternoon, with his wife in his arms and his daughters at his feet and the sun warm on the stone, Lucas did not think about the future. He thought about trust falls and how the best things in life required falling backward into the unknown. He thought about bridges and how they only mattered if people used them. He thought about Fenna's ridiculous hourly schedule and how it had saved him from himself. And he was grateful, deeply and completely, for the orc girl who had decided to trust him before he had learned to trust himself. They walked home across the bridge as the sun set, their daughters running ahead, and Lucas felt the stone beneath his feet solid, dependable, built to last. Some things held, some things stood, and sometimes, if you were very lucky, the right person fell backward into your life and taught you that being caught was just as important as catching. Lucas squeezed Fenna's hand and she squeezed back, and they crossed their bridge together toward the house that waited on the other side. The bridge stood. The family grew. And the trust falls, though less frequent now, continued for the rest of their long and happy lives, a private ceremony, a shared language, a reminder that some exercises never stopped being necessary. Years later, when travelers asked about the bridge and the mixed community that surrounded it, the old-timers would tell the story of the perfectionist builder and the orc girl who scheduled trust falls. The details varied in the telling, but the essential truth remained the same. That sometimes love looked like falling backward, and sometimes building something that mattered meant learning to trust your own hands. The bridge held through storms and floods and the passage of years, outlasting its builder and becoming part of the landscape. But those who knew the story would sometimes pause in the middle of the span, remembering two people who had stood there and chosen each other despite fear and prejudice and doubt. And if, on quiet evenings, someone claimed to hear laughter echoing from the stones, bright and certain and filled with joy, well, bridges carried more than just bodies across water. They carried stories and hope, and the memory of trust given and received. The bridge stood. The story endured. And somewhere in the sound of water over stone, two voices continued their conversation, falling and catching, building and trusting, loving across every divide.